Do we need God?
Of course we do.
Yeah. I mean, I need God.
Depends. Do we need to know God? Do we need to know about God? Because I would say, regardless of whether, well, yeah, I mean, we need God. But do we need to be aware that we need God? I don't know. I think God functions and exists regardless of whether or not we know that we need God. So I don't know. I mean, we wouldn't be here if it weren't for God. So obviously we need God.
One thing that I actually believe in is that God doesn't need us. We need God. And because of this, God's mercy, God's love for us is not dependent on whether we believe in Him, whether we serve God. God is the most merciful, the most just, the most loving being there is. And I think for anyone, regardless if you believe in God or not, God will always bestow bounty and His blessings upon everyone. And yeah.
Like, God is there. God is always there. Like, we need to accept Him. It's like accepting our reality. I think we're being actually disingenuous to ourselves if we don't say there's a God, because all these things are part of us, and we're denying, to me, a really clear part of existence, which it's clear now. I've done my thinking and done research and reading and studying about it.
I think everyone needs a guidance that I think something non-human, like beyond human, something greater, which I think is God.
We wouldn't be without God. So I would think that we do need God. God is everything in all things, right?
Do I need the one that loves me more than even my parents? Of course. If He wasn't there, there would be no parents for me. Where would I grow from?
If there wasn't God, there wouldn't be the creation. So, I mean, philosophically, yes, we do need God. Pragmatically, yes, we also do need God, because His teachings and His revelation is like the blueprint of human evolution. And if there weren't this blueprint that came from a divine source, humans would just be stuck in its own system, like what it almost is right now, right? We see how different thoughts and different opinions and ideas and ideologies are just entangled together, and one is fighting the other. So you, like, in that sense, you sort of need this higher, out of the system source of insight to lead humans to where it should be.
As a society, I think we do need God. As an individual, you could argue that you don't need God, but I think it limits where you can go. I think because you limit yourself to only the physical world and the physical pool of knowledge, whereas then believing in God, and if you accept God as a thing, then there's basically more that you can harvest knowledge from. But I think as a concept, I think that's kind of where it goes. It's like, if you don't necessarily need it to survive on a physical level, but I think you need God to survive on a spiritual level. After a physical life, I think the spiritual life is probably more important, also because it lasts longer, so yeah.
So I think, based upon these spiritual qualities and the beauty of that, if these spiritual qualities are of the soul, and there's this whole concept of like what the soul is and what this metaphysical world is, your mind's open to the potentiality of a God, of something which doesn't exist in this physical world. Then we can look at the spiritual qualities, and we can look at the perfection of them and say, if God is an example, if God is a representation of those spiritual qualities, and then we need those spiritual qualities, so then we need to accept God, and we need to learn to work with Him and work to strive with Him and accept His love and to love Him, and we've got this manual on how to do it. And so if we want peace and we want all these beautiful things that everyone wants, then we need spiritual qualities. We need to be good at them. And so then in effect, we need God. So if God is the spiritual qualities and we need them, we need God. Same thing.
A lot of people, although they don't describe them as religious, they still practice meditations. They do a bit like yoga, something spiritual to release themselves or to find more connections to the world, to the nature, which I think all of these are actually like the examples that why we need God, that we just have this desire to be connected.
Yeah, I think I'm thankful that I do have a connection with something that is greater and bigger than myself. Keeps me humble, keeps me grounded. And when I think of the legacy of my family and what my family has endured from slavery to now, it's like there must have been a God. There had to have been a God for people to experience such deep anguish and grief and torture, but to still want to keep living and to keep having hope for justice and for better things. And to me, that's so humbling that my ancestors were like, it won't always be like this, and that they made a way for me. And I think that's impossible to do without some sort of anchor in God.
My understanding of that question is kind of similar to, do we need the sun? You know, whether we're a sun worshipper or not, we do need the sun to live. We would all die if the sun didn't exist. Maybe God could be used as a metaphor for the sun, as a source of energy and light and life. And whether we acknowledge it or not, we do need it to live. So with that kind of metaphor in mind, maybe our understanding of God could be quite mystical. You know, maybe even if we are atheist, we may discover that God is a source of life and energy and love.
Well, I think because most of our structure in society is based on religion already. And I think I'm not a big fan of people like picking and choosing of like, well, we've had religion in the past and we've taken those things and now we don't need to believe in God anymore, and now we don't need God anymore. And it's like, well, but we did need God to get to the point where we are now. So you could put, like, if you look at it very speculatively, you could argue like, okay, we as a society don't need God because we've kind of formed our view on how things work, but it's still based on God's law and therefore, and God's structure in society, and therefore, even if you made the argument saying like, no, we don't need God, you're still basing it on things that have come from God, and therefore, yeah, you need God.
I mean, I think that people maybe need different things, right? I mean, people might not know what they need or what they're missing. I also, like I said before, regardless of whether or not you know it, it's still functioning. So it's still there, regardless of whether or not you understand it. And I don't mean it as in God. I mean like I see God as not like a person. So I think of it as like that there's God in everything.
God is these spiritual qualities that people express so beautifully. He's the light in the world, the brightness that is around, the joy, the peace. And that's why I think we need God, because God is that. And so no God is a lack of that. It's like, that's what darkness is. It's a lack of light.
Yes, we need God. We desperately need Him.